Mess around. .net, net. Where are you?
Ah, I seem to have just had a conversation with my wife's pocket.
Okay. $191. Okay, how do you want me to label this?
Just do pytest.mark.xfile, I think. Oh, no, just pytest.xfile.
Can I do this after the
As a decorator.
PyTest?
As a decorator.
Is it any?
As a decorator on the function.
Do decorators need a particular order? Because there's an online decorator there.
No, it doesn't matter. You can just put them on top of one another.
Okay. And then the other one. Test widget. 191.
And open an issue for that as well, for good measure.
Test check request. Well, I don't really know what's going on. You want me to just say that it's failing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I don't believe so because
Yes, on the topic of our project ideas page, pretty much as soon as, basically.
What's the timeline?
Applications open something or the other on February or something. It's sometime in February. I can't remember.
Where's David?
He did say he'd be here. There was some discussion last year of doing it. We should probably squash some PRs.
Sounds good to me.
Yeah.
Start with 1217, Dan's Lira one.
That's the one we were talking about today.
That hasn't been accepted yet?
No.
But it's, I mean, all the issues that have been brought up in as part of the comments have been addressed. It also now passes Travis. I think it's ready to merge. Stuart gave it a thumbs up. Anyone else have any further comments on it?
Did I not give it a thumbs up? Which number is it, Lyra?
1217.
Okay. I'm giving you a thumbs up as well.
Yay!
I'm going off on the lash now.
Congratulations, Dan.
This has been.
This
I
is
think
being.
this is actually the second PR in this issue. I think we closed one and reopened for some reason. I seem to remember. So it's been going a lot longer than December 3, which is what it says here.
Oh my god.
Is that? Did I see you merge that?
Yep.
Sure.
I did it.
Yes. I'm going on the tear.
Here we are.
Yeah. I wanted to say a bit about this. The PRs that kind of. So this PR, I feel like, is sort of our fault, right? I mean, Dan did as much as she could, and at some point, like, it's our responsibility, right? And I would suggest that if the PR is outstanding for too long, then we should kind of lower our sort of expectations, and accept it such that it forces us to be our responsibility to fix it. Does that make sense?
I think so.
Because
I mean, basically,
it's
it's out there that long.
yeah,
It
if
should
it's
be
out there
merged
that
every-
long, that means that like we haven't
Look.
been doing our job. You know, if the developer has been responsive and has been doing, making the changes that we've been suggesting, if we keep asking for changes, eventually it kind of turns into this like evil cycle where you're just asking them to make it more and more perfect, and it will never reach that goal. And I think it's unfair to developers that put in PRs that we make them wait too long. So that's just my opinion. It's really up to the, Albert and Stuart and such, but we should do better. Strive to do better in the future.
What do others think about that?
I suppose it's just
I agree that we need to. I agree that we need to merge them faster, but it's important that big PRs like that. The reason that's taken a long time is because it's a lot of code. It needs to get proper review. We shouldn't undermine that process for any reason.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. But if at some point, well, I mean, I think our process of accepting and reviewing PRs failed us. I think in this instance, and we should figure out how we can fix it. Essentially, that's basically what I'm saying.
The problem and the solution is we need more time for people to put into reviewing PRs. That's literally it, as far as I can ascertain.
Yeah, and I guess another thing we could have asked is for Dan to submit smaller PRs, right? It's easier.
That was the other side of the argument, which I was going to mention. Yeah, no big.
Yeah. No, I mean it's easier because people have limited amount of time. It's easier for people to look at a smaller PR and accept it. Smaller one. When it's one huge one, people just are not willing to give it a huge chunk of their time. You know what I mean?
Right.
So
I think this one could have been probably broken into maybe two, I would think. The reason it wasn't was because this was my third PR, and the second one still isn't merged. So
yeah.
And also because the way I was developing it to a certain goal, and each of the other sub routines were actually there, not necessarily as standalones, but to serve the purpose of the, say, top 2 or 3 functions in the PR. But this probably, I would say, could have been broken down into at least 2 rather than 1, when that would have improved that a bit.
Yeah, and I'm not blaming you, Dan.
I'm not taking it personally. I'm thinking about how I can improve, or anyone with a PR like this can improve, or make it easier for people as well.
Yeah. Yeah, because I think in the long term this is bad because it will make people get frustrated and go away, right? Like if we don't accept their code and we don't give it the proper review, they're just gonna say, what's the point of my putting in a PR to SunPy at all?
There is that risk if you do have
Yeah.
very long PRs. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, just my 2 cents here.
So do you want to quickly talk us through your goes one as well, Dan, while we're at this?
Yeah. Well, since Steve brought that up, let me just pull that up for myself here. So the goes one that's still outstanding. This might be a record. This has been out there since the end of June last year. And had a lot of helpful comments over the months, and they have all, as far as I can tell and as far as I'm aware, have been implemented. The most recent of which was just 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, which was about the SunPy quantity handlers. It also now all passes Travis. It's the second part of essentially the Go's SSW software, the facilities or the things that you can do in SSW with Go. This is the second half of that capability. And so once this is merged, you'll be able to do all the Go's analysis in SunPy that you can do in SSW. So that's what this is. As far as I'm aware, it's good to go. It passes Travis. Unless there are more comments, of course.
I found one.
Okay, good.
I will always find you comments, Dan.
Comments are good so long as they, are making it significantly better.
Oh, I do love that quantity input decorator.
Sorry, yeah, decorator, not handler.
I'm pleased with that. It was a pain in the ass. Okay.
So what's your comment here? It's that
You're just doing. I'm pretty sure that 2 returns a new quantity object rather than modifying the existing one. So just doing that is pointless.
it's not pointless in the sense that because of the tables, they do have to be in those units.
Yes, but my point is that you need to do long flux equals to long flux 2 unit because it's not modifying it.
Oh, I see what you mean. Oh, okay, right. So it doesn't just convert the existing array; it actually creates another array.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it does. Yeah, I think you can pass copy equals false to 2 if you want to force it to modify in place. But I think you still need to do long flux equals 2 when you do that. So I think it's still going to return a new object even though it won't copy the data.
Okay, I'll write that down.
Also, your no, that's okay. That's fine. So what functionality is this goes one actually adding?
Okay, so far the previous GOES PR allowed us to get temperature and emission measure from GOES observations. This now allows us to get the radiative losses, both across all wavelengths of the GOES emitting plasma, and also literally just sort of adding up or integrating the flux in the GOES passbands. So the second one is almost essentially sort of integration, but it's something that is just part of the GOES sort of package of software analysis package in SSW. And the second actually uses a Chianti to get the energy radiated across all wavelengths. So it's not it's a lot more than just a simple integration. So this completes the GOES analysis functionality for SunPy and makes it equivalent to that already exists in SSW.
Are we doing the same file download trick from Hesperia then, pulling stuff out of SSW?
We are using tables, that are at the moment just to the stored of Xperia.
I'll talk to you later. Thanks.
Are we downloading data out of SSW from Hesperia again then?
Yeah, we're downloading a lookup table. Very, very small file, just a small text file. I don't know, sort of 2 columns of, I don't know, 100, maybe not even 100 rows. But yes, the same trick, essentially.
How does this quantity input decorator work? What does it do?
It checks, first of all, that the input, or that the input to the decorator is an AstroPy quantity, and it also checks.
Hello.
Sorry. It also checks.
Sorry, my connection dropped out there a bit. I don't think.
Okay. It also then basically checks if the unit system that it's in is equivalent to the unit system that's required. So it doesn't necessarily convert it explicitly to, ergs, say, but it does check that it's a unit of energy, for example.
And it gives an error message, some sort of standard error message or something?
Yes.
Yes.
Do we have any documentation on this? Yes. This has all been. Yeah, Stuart's worked long with this. This is it's in the AstroPy, and this is just kind of a backport at the moment until the next release of AstroPy.
Okay.
Is you will use it. Let me tell you, it's great.
Yeah,
It's
I mean,
really
I can see how that makes it much. There's less code. I don't have to worry about that every time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. So Dan, are we downloading data files from Hesperia? More data files from Hesperia here? Hello. Oh man.
Did we lose Dan? I think with this data file stuff, we need to add some sort of facility to download, like lookup data, such that, if it's not there, then it goes and gets it, but it doesn't keep on going and getting it.
Sorry, I dropped out there, so if there's something that was pertinent to me, could you repeat that? So that sounded like it might have been interesting, whatever it was.
I was just saying that we should add some sort of capability to go and download like lookup tables, but it only does it once if it sees you don't have them. I mean, this is not something you have to worry about. I think it's something we need to add in the future.
I think. Well, let me see. Hang on. I think I've already. I have that capability as part of this. Didn't I? We had a function up in was it util.net or something? Check download file, which basically checks if the file is in a given location, and the default is the SunPy data download directory. And if it's there, it doesn't download it. The downside of that, though, is if there is a more up-to-date version of the file, that function in itself will not know that. It will just say, "Oh, you've already got the version." So you have to hit use the key. There's a keyword in it which says force download or force replace, which says that even if it's there, it'll replace it. So that functionality is there.
Yeah, we can. Albert, well, I don't know how far he's gotten, but has looked into this issue of using hashes, and so it could be an easier way to do that. You don't have to force it; it just checks the hash And if the hash is correct, then it doesn't download it again.
To hash the remote file, you have to download it.
No, the remote server would have a hash. It would provide you with the hash.
Yes, that means we've got to change SolarSoft again. That's fine for stuff we're hosting, but obviously we've got to persuade SolarSoft to do that if we're using those data files in thing. And then anyone who updates the data files has to update the hash.
That's right. But I think these data files we're not grabbing, haven't we? We are generating them on our own. And
not these ones, not the Chianti ones at the moment. We did discuss this, and it would involve using ChiantiPy if we wanted to do it completely separately. And there were a number of issues with that, such as licensing, such as it didn't sound like it was impossible, but it sounded like there were it was a big project to make happen. So that would be not a short-term solution.
Okay.
Yeah, talking of big project to make it happen, if you have some idea of what would be required to do that, you could write up a GSOC project proposal for it.
Oh, okay.
We could get a summer student to have a crack at it.
I have an idea of what's involved in using Chianti and so on, but at the moment, I really don't know what's involved from a sort of licensing with ChiantiPy. I don't know what's from a programming.
Well, for the moment, we would have to keep any code that used ChiantiPy separate.
Well, so actually,
on SunPy.
I have some.
That's still not the end of the world.
I have heard back from the guy Kendir who does ChiantiPy, and he said he seems to now be willing to first put it on GitHub, which means I think he's willing to discuss things in general. And I'm going to see him next month, I think, and I was going to discuss things with him further. And so I can bring up this license issue, and I can also possibly discuss whether he'd be interested in having a student as part of the JSOC project, work with SunPy and ChiantiPy together.
Could you potentially email him about the student thing earlier than that? Because if we're going to include ChiantiPy as a separate project on the application, you would like to know about it before the 9th of February or whenever the application's open.
Yeah, I'll do that.
Cool. But I mean, he could get a project under the Astro umbrella, and we could have a project to use ChiantiPy for these things. Those two things could both happen. So
you think he'd have to register as a separate project, or?
No. So we're planning on putting in an application sort of under the Python in astronomy type umbrella. AstroPy, SunPy, AstroPy's affiliated projects, maybe YT. Anyone else who's interested that does astronomy-related stuff can jump on the train, basically.
Yeah.
So basically, have our own umbrella, which is not the PSF, basically.
Oh, okay, I see. Okay, but so he would have to do some sort of, administrative thing to join that.
I mean, we could do it for him pretty much. I mean, he'd have to put up the project ideas and kind of the stuff that we did last year. He wouldn't have to do any direct admin with Google.
Okay.
Beyond accepting students and working as a mentor or whatever.
Yeah.
He would have the same stuff to do that we've had to do in the previous years.
Right. And presumably we could help him with that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, good to know. I'll email him, ask him about it.
I think at the moment our current running project ideas is this 3 months W tier. This 3 months wiki page. I don't know whether we've got a specific GSOC one up and running yet. No, I don't think we do. That's fine. We should probably stay in 3-month project ideas for a while anyway.
Hello.
You're very quiet, David.
Are you
Hey,
hear
David.
me?
Just about.
Can you
So-
hear me?
You're getting louder.
Does anyone hear me or not?
We can
Yes.
just about hear you, but you're like a mouse.
Awesome, I will shout then.
That's bad. Dan, if you fancy writing up a Chianti integration project on that 3-month project ideas wiki page, that would be cool.
Okay, sure. Can you send me the link to that wiki? Because I haven't actually used it before.
It's in the
Or just tell me where to find it.
it's in the group chat.
Oh, it's in the group chat.
There you are.
Ah, yes, perfect. Right, so just click new page for your new idea, is it?
Just edit that page and add it in the
Oh,
review
nice.
on there. And there's like a template thing at the top.
Okay, all right, yeah, I can.
Oh, David turned into a Hoover.
Didn't it happen once before? We kept asking him if he heard that noise. He was like, no, there's no noise here.
Okay,
so
so
what are
anyway,
we doing with
swinging
this
back
PR?
to the Ghost PR for a moment
That's exactly what I was just about to suggest.
after that flipping epic detour we just went on. I mean, this needs a good. I need to read through it and review it properly, but so does someone else, preferably as well.
Yeah.
This needs a thorough review. I mean, it does look like it's mostly there, but it still does look like it needs a proper going over.
Yeah. The one thing I would say is that I would not to the initial light curve. So what I see you doing is you take the goes light curve as an input, you do the calculations, and then you go in and you add in some new time series to the goes light curve. I would say you just output a new light curve.
It doesn't.
not-
It should.
What I saw, it was adding things to the light curve.
You sure it hadn't copied it first?
Oh, well, that's just as bad, I guess. I don't know why you would need to copy it. The person has the goes light curve. They gave it to you. Why do you want to?
Where are you talking about?
Yeah.
Okay, so hold on. Goes LX, I think.
Goes LX 925. Takes in 2 quantity arrays.
No, sorry, that's not
What
it.
you mean is X-ray luminosity.
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, that's the one that takes the light curve in.
Yes, it takes in the light curve, and then it gives you a new light curve with the original light curve, but it added some new.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily it doesn't overwrite the original one unless you set, because when you call it, you say the light curve is equal to the result of this function with the light curve that you have as an input. So unless you set the light curve that you have equal to the output, then it doesn't overwrite the goes light curve.
I think so. Steve's saying, why are we not just returning a new light curve with just the new data, right?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Oh, I see what you mean.
Because then you have 2 objects representing the same time series. That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah. And the new time series it's its own thing, right? It now has luminosities versus X-ray data, so that would be the one thing.
I mean, to me that makes perfect sense. You have an object that you pass into the function, and then you get a new object out. Yes, you've copied some of the data over again, but then if you want to say pass that light curve into plot or something, all of the data is in one place. I wouldn't want to have some columns of the same time series in one object and some columns of the same time series in another object.
Yeah.
No, neither would I. I'd like it all sort of packaged together.
Well, you can package it on your own afterwards if you wanted to, but
you can also unpackage it on your own afterwards if you wanted to.
Yeah, but it's a bad precedent that we are adding. Yeah, that I feel like a goes like curve is a goes like curve.
But you're not modifying the original object. You're still returning a new object. All you're doing is copying some of the data from the old object into the new object for user convenience.
Isn't it still a goes like curve object?
Sure, but that's okay.
Yeah.
Because it is still a goes like curve. Yeah, it is.
Well,
sure.
No, because well, that's what I don't like about it. Is that now we have goes like curves floating around that some of them have certain kinds of data and other ones have more data.
But that's okay.
And
One's
it's
a
not in the
superset of the other
definition
one.
of a goes like curve that you have this luminosity data in there. Like nobody can go up and look up the goes like curve and be like, what the hell is this luminosity data doing in here? Right? Somebody was handed a random goes like curve and it happens to have goes luminosity data. They'd have to go off and look up the goes like curve documentation and be like, what the hell is this luminosity data in here?
Where are you going to get handed this object unless you've already called this function?
What do you mean?
We don't have a serialization interface for, well, I suppose we do, it's pandas. But, like, if you wanted to save this and give it to someone, you'd have to use pandas rather than us. And, like, I don't see the problem with this.
No. That's not. You want.
If you read in the raw goes data file, you're not gonna have this information unless you explicitly call this function on it.
That's right. Yeah, exactly.
So you're always going to see where this data comes. These columns come from. They're going to appear after you call this function.
No, because somebody could then go off and write a new function that takes in one of these goes like curves, but they expect it to have the luminosity data, and it'll look like to a user, oh, I can pass it a goes like curve. Except no, you cannot pass it a goes like curve. You have to pass it a special type of goes like curve that has had this other thing done to it.
That's fine. You just in your function you just write, if it doesn't have these luminosity columns, either generate them, which you can do, just calling the function on it, or raise a nice error to the user saying you need to run this function on it first.
Well, but this goes into the whole, like, why do we have these like curve objects at all, right? Like, you're saying we can extend our base objects in any way that we want, and people just have to get used to it. Like, what if you could take the map object and all of a sudden you edit it and you add this like new function to it, right? And you're saying, well, that's okay.
Well, if you return, if I take,
but then it's not really the object that
it doesn't apply to the map because there's no way to no way to add information to a map in the same way. You can't add columns to a map.
You could add, like, let's say you added, like, there's a function that calculates the errors on the pixels. So now you return, the same map, but now it has this new, like, instead of .data, it's .edata or something, right?
Yeah. Then you have an extra attribute. Oh yeah, I don't have yeah, fine. So you now have .data and .uncertainty or something. That would be fine. In fact, that's specified by the ND data.
No,
class.
but
that's a bad example. But
right. But now all of a sudden you're extending these objects, but they don't really have any relationship to the original object because you don't know, what's been run on them and what extra things they may or may not have.
But you do know what's been run on them because you've got it in memory and you've run it. It's not like we're passing these objects to other people as like black boxes. if someone has these columns in their goes like curve, they've called the
They
function.
are
on it.
black boxes. They are black boxes because, people are going to use this function. Like, sure, nothing's technically a black box because they could go check on what this function is doing, but we shouldn't require users to go check and to see what functions have been run on particular objects.
They're not. They're
so that
not.
they know how to use them in the future.
The user has to run the function.
No. It could be in some script. It could be some other function calling this function. You don't know.
What?
Right? It could be completely. We can make this extremely
your
opaque.
your solution to this is to have a separate light curve object that is specifically has exactly all the same properties as the goes light curve object, except we have the luminosity things.
No. What I'm suggesting is that one, we fix the goes object is the goes object. It contains a certain amount of data, and and that's it. If we want to increase what's in the goes object, then we can go do that at the goes object definition. So if you wanted to make a goes object by default contain luminosity, then we can go and add this script there, and it does it there, and that's fine. What this should return, though, if we do not want to include it there, it should have nothing related to the goes object. It should be a new light curve object, not a goes object. The standard light curve object, I guess, the base one, with the time series and the luminosities. If you want to...
No!
Have all the same metadata. Identical in every...
Well, why does it need the metadata? Why does it need the metadata?
Because it's still holding the original goes data. Because
it does not need to hold the original goes data. That's what I'm arguing again.
No, but it should, because
it's
the data that is, it's taken at exactly the same time from exactly it's a calculated product from that data that's at that time with that metadata properties with all of the information that comes with the goes object. The luminosity data, yes, it might be calculated and extra, but it still is dependent on all the metadata and header information and the timestamps and everything that is the goes light curve object. You couldn't have the luminosity object on another light curve. It wouldn't make any sense. It is inherently goes. Yes, it's calculated, but it is still a property of a goes light curve because it can only be calculated from a goes light curve.
Do you mind if I jump in here for a second? This could go for quite some time. It seems to me, if I understand correctly, Steve, the issue you have really here is that it's consistency, right? So your problem is that you'll have some goes light curve objects that have these attributes and some that don't, and you may end up with situations a priori where you don't really know whether they're there or not, and that seems to be like a design problem, right? It seems so. Like if you were to extend this sort of idea to, let's say, maps, right? You could have a HMI map or something, which has a function in it that calculates some sort of derived quantity and attaches that to your map, your HMI submap, in the same way. And you don't know necessarily when you're writing a script whether it's going to have that property when you run the script. So you could actually do this for any kind of map or any kind of light curve if you wanted to. But maybe we don't want that kind of design. Is that kind of what you're getting at?
Yeah, pretty much.
Right. And Stuart, you're saying that you don't see this as a big issue because it's quite simple to check whether these attributes exist or not when you're, say, writing some sort of script.
Yeah. And also,
you always have to worry about it.
They're conceptually attached to the light curve object, or the map object. They are conceptually part of that thing. Also, there is a slight difference in my mind between doing this to a map and doing it to a light curve. I understand that they are comparable, and if we do it with one, we should probably allow it to the other, and it's fine. But to my mind, adding columns to tabular data and adding attributes to an object are two different things.
Okay. Yeah, I guess I can see that. And I guess, Steve, what you were saying is that it should either every goes like curve object should just have this, or none, right? It's kind of the like it should be initialized that way.
Yeah, because I'm worried from the user's perspective. You know, if they're handed a goes like curve, they should be able to go back and see what things are, right? If they're handed a goes like curve object with this luminosity data in it,
yeah,
right? They don't necessarily know what that is or where it came from. They'd go to the goes like curve documentation and it wouldn't be there, and somehow they'd have to figure out, oh, this was calculated from this function over here, extra underscore luminosity, and that's where they're defining what this luminosity stuff is.
Mm-hmm.
Right? And that would be extremely confusing for a user.
How about we add this function as a method to the goes like curve object?
That would be fine. Yes, I would be happy with that.
Can you explain to me what the difference?
Well, because then it's all packaged together. So.
But I don't. But I say that. But I've thought about this before, and I don't like the ultimate logical conclusion of adding everything to methods of an object in SunPy in its API in general. Like, yeah, we had this discussion with map where we are going to have functions that take a map, do something to it, and return a map, a different map in some way, changed by some process. Because we can't literally have every transformation of every data type object as an attribute on a light curve. So actually, despite just suggesting that, I don't actually like that idea.
Well, I mean, we always have to be careful about what we include with the object and don't, and that's fine.
But I think basically this becomes, like, at this point, the discussion between function and method becomes a fundamental API design decision for the whole of the library, which is, do we want a functional interface where we write functions that take our data types as arguments and return new data types, which will be in some way modified and probably the same type as the one that was passed in, like this, and like things like AIA prep, for instance, rather than, because we could have had AIA prep as a method on an AIA map object, which I out of hand rejected because I want to my mind, in map and also in light curve, maybe not so much at the moment, but when we refactor it, there should be no difference in API between the base data type object, be it map or light curve, and all of the subclasses. Because I feel that is more confusing to the user. The only reason we have the subclasses is to specialize the handling of a specific instrument, not to modify the API of the thing.
Well, then we could just create a generalized prep method.
Well, that is what our subclasses are doing. They are preps for certain data. Yeah. There are specific ways of molding different data into a unified object.
Yeah.
And I think they should stay that way. And I think the API should be consistent over all the objects.
Yeah. I mean, I guess I'm just not convinced by your argument, Stuart, that, I mean, yes, this information is highly related to the goes data, but just because it's so highly related does not mean it needs to be packaged together with it. I mean, you could extend that argument to like any kind of derived quantity. Does that mean it will stay with the thing that generated it? I mean, that's not really feasible, right? I mean, you could think of, maps the same thing, right? Like, if I generate some physical value from the pixels, does that mean I can extend the map and add a new, .data field to it? Like, now all of a sudden my .data is multidimensional, and the dimension.
So making .data multidimensional is strictly prohibited by virtue of the fact that map is an inherently two-dimensional data type.
Right, but you're increasing the dimensions of this data.
But light curve is a tabular data type, and different light curves have different number of columns, and there is no restriction on that in the same way that there is in map. map by design is a two-dimensional data type, whereas a light curve is a tabular data type.
But yes, it's true. So light curve is a little bit different. But
this is my point. My point is that while I understand your comparisons you're making to map, and I do to some extent agree that there is a valid comparison, you have to appreciate the subtlety in the difference between map and light curve. In that all we're doing here is adding columns to a tabular data type, where those columns are logically belong in that table. Having that data in that table makes perfect sense because it is the luminosity, the X-ray luminosity at that time, and attributed to both the already existing columns in that data type. To my mind, having these extra columns is just like adding columns to I don't know, it's perfectly doing it in pandas data frames, doing it with AstroPy tables. Adding columns to tabular data is a perfectly logical thing to do.
Except that you don't. I mean, the goes light curve provides you with a number of, methods and such, and it will not be able to use like plotting. It won't plot this stuff because the goes light curve cannot depend on this being there at all, right? Like the goes light curve object is not going to provide you any useful capabilities for these columns. So then why is it in a goes light curve? Just because you're saying, well, it's so related that you might as well keep it there, but it provides no usefulness besides the fact that it's together with the original data.
But that is an inherent usefulness, and it is very useful. From a user's perspective, at least in my mind, it makes. I don't know. Yeah, I do see your point in that it isn't doing anything, but I suppose you could write a specialized subclass of goes light curve specifically to do it, and just not register it with the upstream thing, and then you could modify plot to do it.
Oh my god!
Well, that's the logical extension of what you're suggesting. I mean, how else? What would you suggest? Returning this data as two quantity arrays as opposed to adding it to the light curve?
Oh no, I would say it should be a light curve, but it should be like a a base light curve basically, and that's it.
So you call a method that returns a base.
The other thing to be said though is that, for instance, if you're looking at the radiative losses as opposed to the X-ray luminosity, there is a logical sequence of the calculation as well. So you start off with your flux values. You then have to calculate a temperature and emission measure, and then from including the temperature and emission measure calculation, you then get to the goes radiative losses. So having it packaged together like that means that it's rigidly all related. If you output two independent quantity arrays, then it's nothing that's hard linking it back to what it was derived from. So say you go and then change the quantity array, or you change the light curve in some way, you haven't got that.
Yep. Did we lost him?
Object. So again, from the user point of view, having it all together and then knowing that this is the value that corresponds to that, which corresponds to that, to me, in my mind, seems very helpful. Because you've got one variable, and everything I need is in it.
Well, I mean, I see that argument as well, but I do think, one, we need to come up with some sort of framework for how we're going to deal with this, with light curves in general, and then two, I actually would argue that this is so fundamental to Go's data that we probably should just put it in the Go's object. But I won't make that. I won't fight that fight right now. It's fine. This is just my opinion. We don't have to talk about it right now. But
so you've ended up arguing against yourself, Stephen? You've turned
No,
it
no,
around.
no, I'm saying if we are going to accept that this is something that can be done, I think we need to write up something that explains when and how this is going to be acceptable, because this can get quickly go out of hand, um, and then the other thing we don't have to talk about.
I am not adverse to Stephen's suggestion of, instead of returning a goes light curve object, just return a light curve object. I think at this point you are removing the specification that the goes light curve is there to provide.
Yeah.
I do kind of agree with that.
But if we were to decide on this, would this generic light curve then also hold the original Go's data, so that it will be packaged together still, but just not in a uniquely Go's light curve object? Or
Yes.
yeah.
Oh, yeah. You could do that if you want, without any problem.
Yeah, it would have all the metadata, all the original data and the new data. The only difference is it would be a light curve object rather than a Go's light curve object, and therefore you wouldn't have the peak method made specific to Go's, basically, which, as Stephen pointed out, when you add this data to it, is made irrelevant by virtue of the fact that it's not going to plot the new data for you anyway. The only downside,
unless you design the peak function such that before it checks how many columns there are.
but
That's making it really complicated.
yes,
Well,
that's bad for different reasons.
Sure.
Well, then you're kind of arguing that this belongs as part of the Go's light curve object, I would say.
It does.
This is a method that should be in there, and then
No.
I mean, it doesn't make sense for the peak to check for something that, like, the Go's light curve object doesn't know how to create. And
Yes. No. We should not modify peak for this, and we should not have this as a method on the Go's light curve object. And there are reasons that I've already mentioned for this, and I've fought this battle once before over map.
This is a different object.
This is a fundamental matter of high level whole project SunPy API.
yeah, I mean, this is very similar to the discussion we had with calculating. So the map thing that you referred to, and correct me if I'm wrong, Stuart, is I wanted to add a function to HMI map that let you calculate the unsigned flux.
Yes, that is correct.
Yeah.
That and AIA prep are both examples of the same thing on map, and I am firm in my opinion that the API of our data types should not change with instrument-specific subclass. A AIA map and a generic map should be totally interchangeable at all times, apart from the data and the metadata they contain.
Why, just out of curiosity, this is a tangent, somewhat tangent, Stuart, but why do we, if we use the AIA map to properly ingest the AIA file, why do we keep it as an AIA map? Why don't we just make it back into a map? The benefit of having it as this different type.
We could. The reason we keep it as a different type is because it makes, well, the reason we do that is because that was how it was written at the beginning. Blame Keith. No, that's not right. The reason it makes sense is because it makes sense to put the AIA specific data mangling and property values and stuff in an AIA object. Like having the mapping, well, in map specifically, there's the subclasses map fits keyword header values to property names, and the subclasses specify that mapping for each instrument. So you have to keep that object, keep that property mapping alive.
Seems like we should be able to not have that. I'm just thinking, like,
you could not have that, but then you'd have to in some way modify the original fits header, basically.
Right. Yeah. But I mean, if we had that, then we would have just maps and light curves and everything, and then.
Well, that's my point. Is while we have specific ones to do the data mangling, we should maintain the API in that we do practically have maps and light curve, because with the factory class, that is how it appears to the user, right? They're not calling something specific for a specific class. They're just calling the factory and getting back an object.
Right. Right. But I'm just saying, if it was clear, you know, when you look at the type, it says AIA map rather than just map. It was clear that every type of map was just a map. Then this notion of having the common API is pretty much locked in. I mean, like, you can't add a method to just AIA map because you don't get AIA maps. You just get maps.
Yeah, sure. And I do agree with what you're saying. I mean, that would be a valid approach, but it would cause, like, there are issues with doing that. Like,
sure, things are made harder, and we'd have.
And basically, the whole point of subclasses is that the whole point of the object-oriented programming is that you make a object more specific to handle a thing, and that it can act like it's the subclass should be a drop-in replacement for the superclass.
I actually think that's a kind of an outdated view of object-oriented programming, because now, at least on the Objective-C side, so I don't speak with a lot of experience here, but there people are very often now like mixing classes, so you can have two superclasses if you wanted to, for example.
Because it's all interfaces. I'm same thing with C#.
Right. It's all interfaces. So
yes, but Python doesn't have the concept of interfaces.
But it doesn't. Well. But it doesn't mean that we have to tie ourselves to that. I mean, the way I think of it, a superclass. So the way I always think about it is, superclass is what is common to all of the objects, right? So if you have all the child objects, the superclass is what's common to all of them, but each of the children can have their own extra thing attached.
They can, and that isn't a yes. And having an extra methods on AIA map wouldn't break the OO principle, because it's not that the subclass shouldn't. The superclass doesn't have to be a drop-in replacement for the subclass. It's the other way round. The subclass has to be a drop-in replacement for the superclass.
Right. Well,
Stunned silence. Anyway, I have to go.
I had this discussion before, and I think I've made my view clear that I disagree.
Well, yeah.
As you become more specific, you can add more relevant functions and methods.
I'm just saying, for Stuart's perspective on the organizational structure here, I think our current use of subclasses leaves it hard to understand why we can't do what Steve is talking about. If instead we were returning not all these crazy subclasses, but really just the base class, then, like I said, it locks in this notion that it really is fundamentally a single API for that data.
Yeah.
When someone takes a look at our code base and they see AIA map, they say, oh, people will want to add methods to AIA map, because there's no obvious reason why that's not kosher.
No, I agree. It's just a choice we need to make, basically.
Well, I argue that maybe we should try harder, that our code reflects our choices.
Yeah, I mean.
Well, first,
my point is that I like the idea that.
We agree on our choice.
Basically, my opinion is that the library should have a more functional interface. But I am willing to willing to listen to counter arguments to this, because it's just my opinion. Right? If everybody disagrees with me, then fine.
I certainly like functional interfaces more for stuff where it can be, where people might want to try slightly different takes on stuff. It's harder to modify methods within objects. If there's a calculation done in a way that you don't like, or a calculation you want to do a little bit, you want to tweak the calculation, it's a little harder to modify a class method rather than just calling a different function. And so if there's a functional interface, it's easier to just like take the existing function and modify it and use something.
Yeah. We can
Anyway,
also.
I do have to leave, which means
Well-
the broadcast is going to die.
Okay, well, bringing it back just as you leave to the specifics of what started this whole conversation. What are coming out of this meeting? What are we saying about what we're going to do with this Go as PR? Are we going to modify? Are we going to let it go as it is? Are we going to put it on the long finger again for a while?
Well,
What's
did
the
we
last word on this
all
PR?
agree that this should not return a goes like curve?
I would be happy if it did not return a goes like curve. I don't particularly mind if it does, but
Okay. Well, I would say fix that, and then I think it's pretty close to good to go.
Okay, I see David has made some comments as well. I've just seen emails come in, but I haven't seen what they are. So I can do a bit more work on this now and push it when I'm done and let you guys know.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So then I guess we're done with this meeting then, because you have to go.
Well, we should-
And yeah, we should. Yeah, we should. Yeah.
we have to go.
For an hour now, so.
there was something else. Yes, basically write 3-month project ideas if you have any. I thought of some the other day and I've completely forgotten them. Balls. Okay, really good. I remembered one. All right.
Sure.
Thank you.
Okay.
Nice, lively discussion to make my Monday
nice.
evening. Thank you very much.
Sorry for causing all the controversy again.
Again,
No, this is
it's all
good.
your fault,
Always.
Dan. It's all your fault.
Yeah, you regret you invited me onto this thing.
Okay.
All right.
Thanks,
See you later.
everyone. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.